Welcome back. Happy Tuesday. Tremendous Tuesday. I like that. Terrific Tuesday. I like that as well. So, Tremendous Tuesday, Terrific Tuesday. I like both those anyway. We are going to check out Ayrton's Senna video. This Lovely Tuesday. This is like our 5th Senna video. Just how good was he? I think we all know his prowess, multi-time champ, one of the greatest drivers we've seen who unfortunately lost his life. Which we know we still dearly miss to this day. Shout out to, I think, Quadro Cam. All credit goes to him. Big shouts to him. So we are going to check it out. We are going to see what it is on. Hopefully no tears get shed. Hopefully it's just a good reminiscent about how great Ayrton Senna was. His battles with specifically Alain Prost and all. And that's it. That's the intro. Like I said, the intro is kind of like, it's I told you. Some days it's high, which I know. Some days the intro is long as hell. Some days the intro is like quick, easy, point to simple. As always, if you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to like the video and sub as well. We are about halfway to 10K. I don't know if we are going to get it, but if you guys do appreciate it, it'd be much appreciated. If you guys do subscribe, stuff like that. Let's hopefully get let's get the 6K first. Let's do that. But anyway, without further ado, man, let's get it.
Always in my heart, it always has been. I've loved, even though I never got to meet him. He's someone I aspire to be like.
One of the best who has ever done it in F1.
We'll hear always the stories about the legacy. We'll always live.
Like the nice guy could also be the killer.
It's the biggest in history.
A legend.
When the conversation of the greatest racing driver of all time is discussed, a few names are always mentioned, but one name seems to stand out from the crowd. A driver known for not only his achievements on the track, but also the impact he made off it. You would be hard-pressed to find anybody today, racing enthusiast or not, who doesn't recognise the name Ayrton Senna. But just how good was he? Well, let's find out, because you're watching Quattro Cam. My name's Alex, and this is Just How Good Was Ayrton Senna. Now, one of the biggest question marks over anybody given the moniker the greatest of all time is who they competed against. Often the argument weighing down many great sporting figures is how competitive a time did they exist in. Senna.
And you know what, like a funny good point is, like a good point. Because I know, like, a lot of people like to, like, compare eras and stuff like that. Because obviously, it's hard to, like, compare eras in sports. Because, like, stuff was different back then. Cars different. Well, talking about F1 specifically, like, cars were different back then. You know, like, engines were different. You know, stuff like that. But, like, you know what I mean? Great drivers we had, like, in the 80s. Senna, Prost, Niki Lauda. Oh, my God. PK, stuff like that. Like, we have a lot of like great Hall of Fame drivers in that era, and it's probably one of like the great things about F1 is that every decade we have seen just tremendous, outstanding drivers. We go to the 80s, we go to the 90s with Mickey Hakkinen and Nigel Mansell, Schumacher, of course, stuff like that. Damon Hill in the gang. And obviously now for Verstappen, Verstappen. Wait, did I say Verstappen twice? Hamilton, Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, stuff like that. Obviously, Kimi Räikkönen and stuff. So we've had a lot of great drivers in every decade, which makes us so appreciative just how fortunate and blessed we are to be able to have a sport like F1, to cherish it, to, love it, and to have people who we can, to a degree, I guess we can connect to, like appreciate and stuff like that. So. And like I said, you can say that about every sport, but most specifically talking about F1. But shout out
Senna
F1.
Isn't one of these. You see, during his brief time in F1, Senna would race alongside some of the sport's best. 4-time drivers champion Alain Prost.
There is Ayrton Senna, and right behind him is Alain Prost.
Now, Prost is going to be very keen. Prost diving inside. Senna, I'm sure, is in tire trouble, and Alain Prost goes through.
It's Alain Prost, the world champion, winning in Mexico. Alain Prost wins for Ferrari.
3-time drivers champion Nelson Piquet.
The only other thing he can do is if he makes contact or allows Senna to make contact with him. Senna, you see, moving to the right, making it hard. And Nelson's got round the outside of it. Oh!
Hey, he was...
Big side from Nelson and nearly
that was
contact.
Tough.
Tremendous stuff.
And F1 drivers and IndyCar champion Nigel Mansell.
With Alain Prost seemingly going to win it, and Mansell going round the outside. Incredible! Up into second place. He's regained that second place.
Absolutely brilliant manoeuvre by Mansell. Fantastically brave.
And Gerhard
All
Berger.
of these drivers were in their prime years, all greats, at the very best of their game. But despite this, Senna would stand out as something very different. Now, if you look at the stats, they would suggest that Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Michael Schumacher, and one Manuel Fangio were all better than Senna. But if you actually ask racing drivers, including some of those mentioned above, they will all say one name.
I think Senna. I will put him in number 1.
For me, Senna is number 1.
For me, he was number 1.
I will put Ayrton Senna as number 1.
For me, Ayrton Senna undoubtedly was the number 1.
I would put him number 1. You know, he was definitely the greatest driver.
Everybody
If you ask me,
Senna.
I put Senna as well in number 1.
And it's not just the drivers. The stats also support Senna as the master. If you take a look at pole positions won by drivers, Senna sits third, behind Lewis Hamilton and sandwiched between Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel. But if you look a little closer, you'll see that nobody is anywhere near him when you consider the ratio of entries to pole positions. That is, of course, except the legendary drivers, Jim Clark and one Manuel Fangio, arguably 2 drivers who could contest this crown against Senna and showcase just how far ahead of the pack they truly were. But to see Senna's prowess in action, we can look at qualifying for Monaco in 1988. Up against his teammate and future 4-time champion Alain Prost, a Hall of Fame driver in his own right, Senna would lay down a time a whole 1.5 seconds faster than this 4-time champion. And remember, this is prime Prost. He won 2 of his 4 championships in 86 and 89, just 1 season after this Monaco qualifier. And Senna would often drive the famous Monte Carlo streets one-handed. Back when manual gearboxes still existed in Formula 1 cars, Senna would often take corners at over 80 miles an hour. Senna didn't just develop the speed, he always had it. In his rookie season in 1984, he would drive quite possibly the greatest drive of anyone ever.
Now, I have a quick question for you guys. Now, we all here talk about like how fast drivers are. Do you think when it comes to like the speed and like how fast man is, do you think is that credit to the car itself, or is that more credit to the driver itself? So I don't know if that makes sense. So let me try to elaborate right quick. Like I said, I'm not gonna keep you guys for long, but so like say if Latifi had a Mercedes car, or say if Latifi had like this year's Red Bull's car, right, or this past season Red Bull's car. And Latifi was like, coming in, was getting podiums and stuff like that. Is that more credit to the car itself because it's the fastest car out there, or is it more credit to Latifi? Now, if we had Hamilton, or if you have Verstappen driving, the AlphaTauri car from last season, and I think we knew like AlphaTauri had like one of like the slowest cars. Is that more credit to? But Verstappen, we know how fast he can be, but the car didn't really help it. So is that more of the car itself, or is that for Verstappen? I don't know. Does that make sense? You guys let me know in the comments down below.
In an immense downpour of rain, the young rookie Senna would fly around the Monaco streets. As champion and champion crashed off the course, the young Senna would charge on, hunting down and shaving off second after second from future teammate and future 4-time champion Prost, who would eventually come to stop his car in the middle of the track and complain to stewards that it was just too wet to drive. And maybe it was too wet for any man to race in, but Senna was no man. This wet pace would become something Senna was known for. At Donington in 1993, in an inferior car to his rivals, Senna would carve his way through the pack, as if he was driving in the dry, whilst his competitors battled it out in the wet, driving as if it was in a different reality or dimension to those around him. This ruthless speed was only matched by Senna's ruthless racecraft, often putting both himself and the other drivers in a position for an accident and letting his opponents decide their fate. A high-speed game of chicken that the Brazilian master would win more often than not. Showcase.
I don't care, this is hard. We're like 5 minutes in, but this documentary is very, very, very good. Very, very good. It's outstanding. Very, very good documentary. Let's keep going.
His mental strength with high-level psychological warfare, beating drivers not only on the track, but in their minds. Once Senna had your number, the game was up. He knew what you would do before you could do it. He was, quite literally, 5 moves ahead of you to demonstrate just how ruthless and cutthroat the Brazilian was. In 1990, the Japanese Grand Prix, Senna would win the championship if his former teammate and future four-time champion Alain Prost failed to finish the race. So Senna did what only Senna could do. He ended Prost's race at the very first corner, because if Prost didn't win, Senna would.
Go! And Senna sprints away, but Alain Prost takes the lead. It's happened. Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing. Senna goes off at the first corner.
That is sick.
That's a very sad way
That
for
is
this year's
sick.
very exciting World Championship to finish.
Notice the distinct lack of tyre smoke. Senna was playing chess as his rivals played checkers. And I mean that quite literally. Senna would often play chess with master tactician Sir Frank Williams, developing his mind, not just his driving. Senna was built to win. Every fibre of his being was focused on one thing: winning. Because
hey, I don't care if I was sitting in that position, and if I had like a 1-point lead, and then all I need to do was just, you know, finish in front of Buddy, I ain't gonna cap. I'll probably do some shit like that. I can't. It's messed up. I get it. It's kind of like unfair, you could say, but to be honest, man, I mean, it's a you can say it's kind of like a lame way to win, but it's strategy wise, it's top tier.
you can't do what it takes to win. You will only ever come second.
By being a racing driver, you are under risk all the time.
Yeah, sure.
By being a racing driver means you are racing with other people. And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
Right.
Because we are competing. We are competing to win. And the main motivation to all of us
is to win.
Is to compete for a victory. You either commit yourself as a professional racing driver that is designed to win races, or you come second, or you come third, or you come fifth. And I'm not designed to come third, fourth, or fifth. I race to win, as long as I feel is possible.
It wasn't just speed and ruthlessness that Senna had in his arsenal. He was also an expert tactician. Senna would sit down and discuss every aspect of the car and tracks to make sure that man and machine were as in sync as possible. Senna worked just as hard off the track as he did on it. In an era where racing drivers were like rock and roll stars, Senna remained focused and planted, proving hard work beats talent, and hard work with God-given talent is unstoppable. His race engineer, Pat Simmons, is one of few people who could see this firsthand. There was one area at Dallas where just about everyone hit the wall. He hit it there too. When he got back to the pits, he said, "I just cannot understand how I did that. I was taking it no differently than I had before. The wall must have moved." We thought, yeah, right, sure, the wall's moved. He was very insistent on this, so after the race, we went out and had a look. The wall had moved. It was concrete blocks, and someone had clipped it, moved it just a few millimeters. And I mean just a few millimeters. And he had been judging it that perfectly. Senna did all of this whilst driving in what can only be described as a jet engine on wheels. The racing cars of the day had very little downforce, making them squirrely and nervous. Add in the 1,200 horsepower engines, a whole 200 horsepower more than modern cars, even with their electric assistance, and you can begin to understand just how much skill was required to keep these cars the right way up. But outside of all of this, Senna was also one of the most compassionate people to ever walk the surface of the earth. He was deeply religious and believed in living life right in the eyes of God, even risking his own life to save the lives of others.
Friday morning was nice and sunny, but not for Eric Comas, who crashed heavily in the fast Blanchimont sweep before the pits. Ayrton Senna was the first to reach the scene of the crash, and he rushed to help the motionless Frenchman.
At Spa in 1992, Senna would stop his car and run down the track, dodging his fellow competitors' cars by inches, so he could check on the welfare of driver Eric Comas. When he reached the car, Comas was unconscious. Senna turned off his engine so to avoid a fire and stood there in the middle of the track, holding Comas's head upright to help protect his spine. He literally stood in the middle of a live racetrack to make sure somebody else was okay.
So I didn't realize immediately that it probably saved my life, but then talking with the engineers and seeing the car, how the car was destroyed, and seeing the pictures and all the leaks on the cars. Well, it's a day that maybe without Ayrton I could not talk about today.
He often talked about starting a charitable foundation to help children back in his home country of Brazil. And this is what added to Senna's magnetism. On one hand, he would run drivers off the track, risking both their lives in the pursuit of the podium. And in the other, he would risk his own life to save that of another driver, sacrificing time and money to improve the lives of those less fortunate than his own. Senna even donated a reported $400 million to children's charities during his career, a fact that was only known after his death because he wanted to avoid the publicity. Senna gave everything he had to those around him. In 1989, Senna and fellow driver Gerhard Berger would walk Imola to see what they could do to improve the course's safety. Stopping at Tamburello Corner, they climbed through a partition in the retaining wall to investigate the surroundings. Senna wanted to move the retaining wall back, but there was a river just behind it. He feared somebody would die in that spot. Returning in 1994, Senna would witness the death of Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger in qualifying. This had a profound effect on Senna, who hid an Austrian flag in his car as a tribute he planned to unveil at the end of the next day's Grand Prix, a fact nobody was aware of. Senna would never get to fly the flag for Ratzenberger. Whilst leading the race, Senna would go off at the corner he was stood on those 5 years previous. Senna was right about one thing: somebody would die on that corner.
And that's just the most awfulest way. I think I said this when we were going over the worst deaths in F1 history, stuff like that, and I think Senna was on there. If Senna mentioned this 5 years ago, and nobody managed to to fix it or to adjust it, this is one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time. And you would think, his clout or just his, not aura, but it's kind of like LeBron, like the NBA. If LeBron says something wasn't right, 9 times out of 10, most likely the NBA will probably do something about that. If it's the court or how close the fans are, stuff like the ball, they're fixing. That's how I kind of think Senna, to a degree, is kind of like that. Just how powerful or big he is in F1. But for 5 years, if Senna and another great F1 driver, like I said, and Berger, both went to space, whatever, or to that area and said hey, this is not, this isn't really looked right, and nobody still bothered to fix after them years. Yeah, of course, nobody died. I guess between that, but obviously, Rausberg or whatever. Sorry, I forgot his name. If that didn't show you, so I don't think Senna even wanted to drive after that, but he wanted to drive because he wanted to honor his name, and he had the flag right in his car, he was gonna win the race and honor him. That's one reason he drove, was to honor him and win the race for him. But for Senna, like he said, to pass at the same spot he was telling him to fix, that's just awful. And I hate it. I've always hated that. Always just hated that every time Senna's death I see or I read something about it. That same exact thought is just in my head. It's just damn, he said it, somebody's gonna pass away.
The 1st of May 1994 is probably the most well-known date in F1 history. The world lost quite possibly its greatest driver, and most definitely its greatest son. Senna would continue to save lives after his death. Days of mourning were declared in Brazil, and over 3 million people lined the streets for his funeral procession. Such was the impact of his death. Safety was now front and center. It had cost the sport possibly its greatest ever driver.
And of course, F1 decides to, now let's actually check it out. If y'all did before in those 5 years, this would have prevented Senna's death.
Something that could not be allowed to happen again. And it is hard to find a word, if one even exists, when you think of all the drivers that have lost their lives needlessly. How it took the death of Senna, and not of any of these other drivers, to really make things change. So Senna was a different species. A driver not only of immense God-given talent, but also immense dedication to his craft. a win-at-all-costs attitude, but with compassion for his fellow drivers and humans. Senna was perhaps the perfect athlete, the perfect human being. So what do you think to the question of just how good was Senna? Where would you rank him amongst the greats? And is Senna the greatest of all time? What we can say for certain is that Senna was not just a once-in-a-generation talent. Senna was Senna. Nothing can compare. Nobody will be the next Senna. There is only one. There will be only one. Ayrton Senna. I'm not gonna lie. That was probably one of the hardest scripts I've had to write and read, especially.
That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Shout out again to bro for the video, man. Quattro came, all credit goes to him. That was absolutely amazing. I'm still stuck on like the 40% pole, like the pole winning position he was winning. Like in every like qualifying you were doing, and you managed to get pole at least 40% of the time, like in all your like qualies. Just imagine the more races he could have done, like the more qualities he could have done if he never passed away. Just great. But you guys let me know, you guys top 3 F1 drivers of all time in the comments down below. So always don't forget to like the video and sub as well. Take care, stay amazing. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.